Hi everyone, it's Anita Breen, and I'm going to talk to you today about FERPA. What is FERPA anyway? Well, FERPA stands for the Family, Education Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. It's a federal law that protects the privacy of student education records. Education records include any records that relate directly to a student, and they contain personally identifiable information, and they're either maintained by an educational institution or agency, a school for us, or by a party acting for that institution or agency. And they can include written documents, student files, their photographs, anything they've done on the computer, the websites, films, and they include directory and non-directory information. But faculty notes, things that you've taken, compiled data, administrative records that are kept exclusively by that person who made them and aren't accessible or revealed to anyone else, they aren't considered educational records and they don't fall under the FERPA guidelines. Directory information includes a student's name, address, their phone number, email addresses, their birth date, where they were born, dates of attendance at your school. This information can be disclosed to a third party upon request and without consent of parents or eligible students. An eligible student would be somebody who is 18 years old or older, or someone who's attending a post-secondary school. So it might be somebody who hasn't quite turned 18. I don't know how many that would be, but maybe somebody who graduated a little early, or back when I was in school, I was 17 that next year. But if they're attending that post-secondary school, then they're considered the eligible student. At our school, at enrollment, parents are given a form to sign if they don't want information published or shared. And this information also includes photographs of students taken at school or at school functions. So before posting pictures to your web pages, be sure to check to see if any of those students have signed the non-disclosure forms. Non-directory information includes student social security numbers, their identification numbers, what their race is, ethnicity, nationality, gender, their grade reports, or their transcripts. And this information cannot be disclosed without prior permission of a parent or an eligible student. Prior written consent must include these things. Must include specific records to be disclosed, the stated purpose of the disclosure, why the people want that, who the records are going to be disclosed to, a date, the student's signature, and the signature of the custodian of the record. Again, eligible student would be somebody who's 18 years old or older or attending a post-secondary school. Who has rights under FERPA? Well, parents of students who are under the age of 18. And under FERPA, if a student is living under the care of a person on a day-to-day basis who isn't his or her natural parent or guardian, like a grandmother, an aunt, some other relative, or a family friend, that person can be considered a parent. It doesn't necessarily have to be a birth parent or a legal guardian, just the person that has that day-to-day responsibility of that child. And the other person who has rights would be students who are 18 years or older attending a post-secondary school. At 18, rights have been transferred to the students. As a special ed teacher, I have to inform parents and students 1 year prior to the students turning 18 that the rights will be transferred to the student. And there's a form on our WebKids, which is our special education forms page, and that the parents have to sign and the student has to sign to let them know. Depending on the disability of the child, that kind of gives the parents about a year to figure out if they need to do something else to help protect their children once they turn 18. What rights do parents have? Well, parents have the rights to review student records, and they have the right to have school records corrected if they find something that's inaccurate there. They have a right to a formal hearing if the student doesn't amend that record, and they have a right to file a complaint against the school for disclosing educational records without their written permission. Who has access to those records? Well, schools can disclose records without consent to school officials with a legitimate educational interest, which can include enrollment issues, other schools to which a student is transferring. So if a student is going to go to another school and they have called or sent a written information asking for their transcripts, we have students that on the special education side that move to a different school. We just can't send their IEP records. They have to call and or send a letter requesting them so that we mail them their IEPs. Or persons with judicial order or lawfully issued subpoena, or where the health and safety of the student is an issue. Let's see what you know. We'll take a little quiz and see what you know. True or false? A police officer is conducting a criminal investigation. They always have the right to access student educational records. What do you think? Well, the answer is false. They must have a subpoena or a judicial order or a signed written consent of a parent or eligible student. True or false? Educational records include only those records contained in a student's permanent file. That answer is also false. There are any records maintained by the student that are in any format that are identifiable to a particular student. That can include the files in a file cabinet, your little file folder we pull out, can include a web page, special education records, in our case that's on WebKids, or PowerSchool, the students' information that we pull up every day that has their picture, has their social, or their ID number, has all of that information, has their grades, any of that. True or false? Teachers have the right to inspect and review the educational records of any student in their school. That answer is also false. To be able to look at any records of any student in the school, you have to show a legitimate educational interest or a need to know within the context of your role in the school. Do we have access to other students' information? Yeah, we do on PowerSchool. As teachers, you can go in there and you can look at anybody. You can look at anybody's attendance and anybody's grades, but you really should not be doing that unless you have a legitimate educational interest in that student. Yes or no? An unauthorized person receives personal information about a student from an unattended computer screen. Is the school responsible? The answer to that is yes. You should treat information on the computer the same as a printed report. Never leave a computer with information displayed on it unattended. Also, you need to keep your passwords of your computer in a safe place so that students or anyone else can get access to that and open it up and be able to look. And I don't know how people handle substitutes. You know, if you give them the passwords, they can get on there, but you know, a substitute then could be able to get on and look at other people's information. So probably that would be something that shouldn't be shared with anyone else either. Another yes or no. Is it okay to leave personal identifiable papers or an exam in a box for a student to pick up? Let's say a student says, hey, I want to get my test. Can you leave it, you know, on your desk or in a box and I can pick it up later? What do you think? Can you do that? The answer to that is no. You cannot leave these types of papers in a public place. Anyone could pick them up and review them. You can't leave them on your desk. You can't leave them in your mailbox or the counter in the office. It would probably be best just to ask that student to meet you someplace and give that to them. Okay, what would you do? You get a phone call from a person who says she's the aunt of a student and she needs to get in touch with him. It's an emergency and I need to know where I can find him right away. Can you tell her the time and the location of his next class? Actually, you cannot. This person could be a stalker, although that picture doesn't really look like a stalker, or it could be a family member that's out to hurt the student. Could be a non-custodial parent perhaps. And we've had that issue with our school. We had a lockdown this year, and because we had a non-custodial parent that had threatened to go to the school and get the kiddo. So we cannot tell anyone over the phone that if the parent comes to the school, that's a different story. But over the phone, we're not really sure who that person is, and we can't tell when we're talking on the telephone with them. Okay, can you share this information? You receive an email from a reputable employer asking for the names and addresses of students that have a GPA of 3.5 or higher. They say, wow, we have this great job information and we want to offer it to these students. Can you share the information? Can you give them a list of all those kiddos that have a GPA of 3.5 or higher? Actually, you cannot. A student's GPA is confidential information. You have to have written consent to do that. So we need to remember these things. You must get written permission from a parent or an eligible student before disclosing any identifiable student information. Directory information is the only information that can be disclosed without permission, but it is still a good idea to let the student know that you've been asked to disclose this and to tell them that you did. Parents and eligible students can request non-disclosure of information. Again, we have the form that parents sign at the beginning of the school year if they don't want any of their students' information disclosed or published. Notify parents and students about their FERPA rights. And when in doubt, err on the side of caution. Ask, 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 and get permission, written permission in writing before you do something. Thank you. I hope you've learned your responsibilities under FERPA today.